Welcome to Film Detour, a podcast where two longtime film buddies take you down and around the back alleys and side streets of cinema.
With the occasional left-hand turn.
I'm John Napick.
And I'm Bob Mueller. So let's go. John, you ready?
I'm ready.
Let's hit it.
Okay, today's episode, Videodrome.
Directed by David Cronenberg, 1983.
He's had a long career, David Cronenberg.
Cronenberg is a really, really fascinating director. And he's able to come up with stuff that I don't think anybody else would dare try to come up with. The only other director I can think of is David Lynch, who would come up with this really bizarre stuff and just go with it. More
on the sci-fi bent. Both of them initially, it was kind of a weird...
This fantastical, everyday man thrust into these situations, and they have a great imagination. The difference for me is, and I love Lynch's stuff, but the difference for me is that David Lynch sometimes puts in stuff that's just weird for the sake of being weird. With Cronenberg, he builds this reality that you think, that's not even possible, that you couldn't even think of this sort of thing. And he does it with such reckless abandon. I
mean, they both almost came up similar times, and they had similar beginnings. Like they both did short films, and that were artsy, but
really interesting,
strange,
very intellectual. Yeah. What's interesting for me about Cronenberg is that he, for a long time, certainly in the early days, he was funded by the Canadian Film Development Corporation.
Yeah,
but once he premiered Shivers, or They Came From Within, the critics went bananas. And basically, one of the critics was saying, you should go see this David Cronenberg movie. It's horrific, it's disgusting, but you paid for it. and according to Cronenberg, it was actually responsible for the reaction to this was actually responsible for, and that article that this one critic wrote was responsible for him getting kicked out of his apartment. There was some sort of morality clause, and the guy kicked him out of his apartment because they were so horrified by the graphic sexuality and the graphic blood, et cetera, et cetera. But
so let's go through his movies. And again, there's lots of movies. We can't talk about every single one.
No, of course not.
Again, he started out doing short films, but his first feature was independent, was Shivers. Or They Came From Within.
Yeah.
And right after that was Rabid in 1977.
With the notorious Marilyn Chambers.
Marilyn Chambers, who was a early porn star.
Right.
And very similar films in a way, right? They're almost like Shivers had that little slug, whatever that was. Parasite.
I have this image of Joe Silver with a pair of pliers trying to pull one of those parasites off his face.
And some weird, pedophilia going on in that movie. Very strange.
You mentioned some of these, really over-the-top type taboos. But what's fascinating to me about Cronenberg is that he just does not flinch.
Right.
He does not turn away. I remember reading something about Kurosawa saying an artist must not look away. And Cronenberg, without a doubt, does not look away. In fact, he just goes, full speed ahead, damn the torpedoes.
Okay, so right after Rabid, he did The Brood.
One of my all-time favorite Cronenbergs.
Which I think is one of his best films.
It's amazing.
Basically, it's an allegory on divorce, basically.
Yeah, because he was going through divorce at the time, and that was his Kramer versus Kramer.
Oliver Reed in that movie.
Samantha Eggar, terrific.
And then right after that, he did Scanners. In 81.
First time I ever saw a head explode. I'd never seen a head explode before. A really interesting movie. I would say that has one of the bleakest, if not the bleakest soundtracks I've ever heard. It's just bleak from beginning to end.
It's a great soundtrack. And also, again, he's another guy in the 70s going into the 80s who did a lot of work with prosthetics and makeup and special effects that were not computer generated. These are all real effects.
And that's the really cool thing about we're doing Videodrome today, and there are effects in here done by Rick Baker, which are just unbelievable. And when you look at it now, you may go, oh, geez, it may not look as good as it could. But we're talking about state-of-the-art stuff.
Right.
And wasn't CGI, and a lot of this stuff had to be, done with prosthetics and foam rubber and other stuff. But
practical.
Practical. It really looks beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh, if you can call some of the things beautiful.
So right after Scanners, in 1983, Videodrome, obviously. But then in the same year, funny enough, The Dead Zone. which is one of the best Stephen King adaptations.
It's one of my all-time favorites.
Yeah.
I think it's fantastic. Christopher Walken's great. But this just shows you also something else about Cronenberg. He doesn't have to only have his own material. He can take someone else's material and really make it his own.
Well, that's the first time we see that.
Yeah, absolutely. It was really like a revelation for me because I thought, this guy is just his own animal. He's the auteur, and he comes up with a notion, and that's that. And I think it's a great screenplay.
Right. So the thing with The Dead Zone is, I think that's his first crossover into Hollywood.
Right.
Like Videodrome was the last kind of Canadian independent movie. He did get a bigger budget for that, but
you can see the budget difference.
Yeah.
Certainly from Shivers and Rabid.
And so now he's big in Hollywood, and the next film that comes out is The Fly with Jeff Goldblum.
Well, this is amazing because he's a gun for hire in this case. It's not a Cronenberg, generated project, and he does an amazing job with this.
It's a remake. But he wrote the story, I think, or the screenplay.
He wrote part of the screenplay, not the entire screenplay. That was not his screenplay to start with. In fact, he said that when it came to doing The Fly, a lot of people thought all the kind of gross out stuff and these kind of disgusting images, that was all Cronenberg. He said, no. I wrote the relationship stuff.
It felt like a Cronenberg script to me.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Because it had a lot of those elements in it.
Right. But I mean, it just as far as a project self-generated, didn't just come directly out of his head, that sort of thing.
So right after The Fly, we have Dead Ringers with
another one of my all-time
Jeremy
favorites.
Irons.
In a dual role. Incredible performance.
Yeah.
He's talking to himself walking down a hallway.
Yeah.
And the conversation is seamless.
Well,
It's
they used motion control with the camera.
Right.
So that's a beautiful movie, I just have to say. It's very poignant and sad.
Absolutely.
And then Existence, A History of Violence.
Naked Lunch. And Crash. Crash is a fantastic movie. Now, it's certainly not for everybody. And even the French, they gave him the special jury prize for Crash for audacity.
And this had James Spader.
And Holly Hunter.
And Rosanna Arquette.
The thing is about Holly Hunter is you would never in a million years expect her in a movie like that. But she pushed to be in that movie. So it's pretty interesting. Well, she wanted to really push herself out of that type that she was in. She's pretty racy in the piano also, I'll say. That's true.
But Crash from a J.G. Ballard novel, right? And one of his latest ones I really liked was Eastern Promises.
I didn't see it.
Viggo Mortensen is in that.
He was in History of Violence, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Also, Cronenberg, as an actor, was pretty notable in a couple of different roles. One really comes to mind is in the movie written and directed by Clive Barker, Nightbreed. And he plays this serial killer, Dr. Philip K. Decker. And he has this weird kind of almost looks like a scarecrow mask with a zipper face and buttons for eyes. It's really creepy. He's really creepy and really good in it.
He stars in that?
Yeah, he's one of the stars. And he also was the gynecologist in The Fly. And he was an obstetrician in Dead Ringers.
Then we have the cinematographer in this, Mark Irwin.
He was with Cronenberg pretty much from the almost beginning. The first thing he did was a racing movie that Cronenberg did. We didn't discuss before, but Fast Company. And everything from there he did. Scanners, Videodrome, The Dead Zone, The Fly. He just kept going with him. So that's his man.
Very distinguishing look to the film.
Absolutely.
And you think of Cronenberg when you see those looks, but obviously it's Mark Irwin doing the lighting.
Absolutely.
Almost like a clinicalness to them.
Yep.
Not very warm looking.
No.
Very cold feeling films, but beautiful.
But another factor involved with the look of the film is really, I would say his creative partner is Carol Spear, who was his production designer. And the look that you see in each of these films, like you said, the coldness and strange little eccentricities that different characters have, especially we see in Videodrome, that's all Carol Spear. She really captures these things. Like
I mean, in Videodrome, it really comes to the forefront.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Amazing look. But The Brood has that
absolutely.
Look to
she
it,
did that as well. I mean, she really was.
It's funny because I always thought they all kind of look Canadian, in my mind. This Canadian feel to it, all shot around Toronto, I guess. Sure. But obviously it has to do with the design.
Yeah. And she really was, like I said, a real integral partner to his vision, to what it was really going to look like. So she was it for him. A great part of this movie and a lot of Cronenberg films is the music. Howard Shore, who has a very, very long career. He's like the John Williams for Cronenberg. It's interesting because you and I used to be big fans
of Howard Shore because of Cronenberg.
Absolutely.
But he's almost got a second career after that because he became so famous in Hollywood. Incredible. And
he did After Hours, Silence of the Lamb. He did big, John.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the diversity.
Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings, which he won Academy Awards for, and just incredible stuff. But he has a real quality when he's working for, or I should say with Cronenberg, that takes you right in there.
But very early, to me, if I can remember correctly, very early kind of electronic sound.
Yes, absolutely.
And this is 70s,
keyboard stuff,
80s.
Yeah.
And I remember you giving me some tapes of his soundtrack.
Tapes.
And
that's way back, John.
We were like really tapes, cassettes.
Yep.
We were very big fans of Howard Shore before he made it big.
Absolutely.
Well, I mean, he was known through Cronenberg pretty much.
Yeah. I mean, his soundtrack for The Fly is fantastic.
Yeah. One of my top 5 soundtracks is Dead Ringers. It's just a beautiful, beautiful soundtrack.
There you go. We're in agreement.
And then, of course, we cannot forget the special effects on this. Rick Baker.
Rick Baker. Unbelievable. He just...
You know, his one of his early movies was the autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman. He did the makeup.
He did the makeup for that. That's right.
For her.
Yeah. For Cicely
her
Tyson.
aging, yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, he's been around a long, long time. In fact, when he was really young, he had all these different masks and whatnot. And when George Lucas was doing Star Wars, he basically went down Baker's basement and said, okay, I'll take that one, and I'll take that one, I'll take that one. And for the cantina scene, those masks, a lot of the masks at least, were masks that Rick Baker created. So, I mean, a career guy who was an innovator, you know, like almost no one else, like a Dick Smith.
Yeah.
Just could do makeup effects and other types of effects that just creates a whole reality that you couldn't even possibly get.
And worked with a lot of directors. I mean, like John Landis, American Werewolf. I think he won an Oscar for that. Right. American Werewolf in London.
It's unbelievable.
Even like Ed Wood, he does the makeup. So not even only special effects, he's doing makeup.
Right.
Effects.
Well, that's what I said. He's like Dick Smith plus because he does these effects and he does the makeup. So he's a wizard.
Yeah.
Without question. And then we got the one, the only, starring James Woods.
How is that guy a star? I mean, he's a great actor, but I was watching him in this movie, and you look at him going, he's the oddest-looking guy.
He's a weird-looking guy with kind of pockmarked skin and stuff. Yeah. But he has a presence.
Oh,
he really has a presence. He goes way back. He was in The Way We Were.
Yes.
And then he was in Night Moves with Gene Hackman, the Arthur Penn movie. He was in The Choir Boys. Must have been a Joseph Wambach kind of thing, because the most memorable thing for me is I saw the commercial for the onion field, and it scared the shit out of me.
He plays one of the criminals in that movie. He's so scary.
He's really scary.
Yeah. And I think that kind of...
I was afraid when I saw him in the trailer on television. I thought, oh my God, who is this guy?
But he also had a really big role in Holocaust, that television movie with Meryl Streep.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And one of my favorite Oliver Stone movies and favorite James Wood movies, Salvador.
Salvador put him over the top.
Well, it was it is a terrific film, and it's really well written and directed, and Woods is terrific in it.
Bestseller, Larry Cohen.
A Larry Cohen script with Brian Dennehy. I love that movie. He plays a hitman. He wants Dennehy to write his life story.
Right.
That's what it's about. But he's perfect in that.
He's been in tons of movies, but who can forget him in Casino as the sleazy boyfriend. And, of course, his co-star in this, Deborah Harry from Blondie fame.
She does a really great job in this. You know, Cronenberg is able to pull performances out of people that you wouldn't really expect him to be able to pull performances out of. She was also in a movie called Union City that was way, way back.
That's like an early independent film.
There are a bunch of other actors in this. Sonia Smits.
As Bianca Oblivion.
Peter Dvorsky.
That's Harlan.
Jack Creeley.
Jack Creeley is Brian Oblivion. Love this character.
Julie Kaner.
Is Bridie.
And Lynn Gorman.
Lynn Gorman is Masha.
What's interesting about these actors, actually everybody in the movie, but these other actors, they're basically a lot of television stuff.
Yeah.
And this is really the only film.
Are they primarily Canadian actors?
Yeah. What's interesting to me is Cronenberg is looked at as this hard director and a lot of blood and a lot of effects and a lot of guts. And I think people don't take the time to look at him as a writer and as a really good director.
Yeah.
And he got performances out of these guys that are just terrific.
Which adds to the story because it's kind of this ensemble cast, and you may not be familiar with them, but they are good actors, like you say.
Right.
And it just gives this flavor to the film.
Absolutely.
This oddness to it. And I'll just add one more. Leslie Carlson as Barry Convex. Yeah, another great face.
He goes back to Black Christmas, the Bob Clark horror film.
Oh, yeah.
He's the one who did A Christmas Story later on, which is kind of weird. Leslie or Les Carlson was actually in The Christmas Story. Here's some trivia. Can you tell me who he was?
I cannot.
He was the tree salesman.
Okay.
That Ralphie's father was bargaining with.
Thank you for that.
There you go. And I just want to make the point about Howard Shore, because the movie doesn't even start yet. You have the Universal logo come up.
Yeah.
And you already hear these two really bleak sounding notes. And that's Howard Shore basically letting you know, okay, this is where we're going.
Yeah.
Strap yourself in, because this isn't going to be pretty.
Very ominous sounds.
Absolutely. And the movie hasn't even started yet.
And we see this kind of station ID on this television set for Civic TV. Channel 83.
I love the logo. This kind of middle-aged, chubby guy lying in bed with the television set actually in bed, and he's got his little teddy bear next to him. Civic TV, the one you take to bed with you.
Well, that's the thing. Back before cable, there was something called UHF, which were these stations, which were all independent, right? Most of them local.
Right.
And they were at the far end of the dial.
Yeah, and they were kind of cheesy. I mean, sometimes you get bored with network television.
Some were religion, some were this or that. So it's funny that we see this commercial or this identification on the TV, and then you hear this voice. It's
a girl's face talking directly at you from the television set. And it's his quote-unquote Girl Friday.
His Girl Friday. It's kind of like a crude video alarm clock.
Right. Which is interesting, because this guy, we've come to learn, is he runs this television station, and his whole world is really about television. So him getting woken up with this television alarm clock thing, message from his Girl Friday, his secretary, is just fits right in with this character.
So he wakes up, and it's James Woods. Max Wren is the character, and he lives in this kind of very 70s slick-looking apartment.
Very slick.
Eating cold pizza for breakfast.
Yeah, it really gives you a setup of who this guy is. He's kind of sleazy. He's kind of creepy, and he's making coffee, and it's kind of an old filthy coffee pot.
Yeah.
And then he's eating pizza, and he's dunking it in the coffee while he's looking at pornographic images, stills from this movie that somebody is looking to hawk to his television station.
Yeah, and well, what's funny is the whole setup kind of is reminiscent of kind of like an old Private Eye in a way. You got the Gal Friday, the Bachelor Pad. Yeah. So we've learned from this voice that he's got this important meeting from his Gal Friday. You cut to this low-rent neighborhood. He's walking on the street, and he's entering the Classic Hotel. And believe me, there's nothing classic about it.
No.
It's like a dumpy hotel.
Some guy's down the hall screaming to get in from his girlfriend.
Right. Yeah. And he knocks on the door. And, of course, you see him steal some matches from the cleaning lady, and this Japanese man opens the door, and it's so cheap, he pulls the lock off.
Right.
So we learned from this that this is a salesman, this Japanese guy, and he's selling some show called
Samurai Dreams.
Samurai Dreams.
Which is a softcore pornography that you might catch in the early days of cable.
And it's the same principle, though, because, this is it's called Civic TV. Again, nothing civic about it, because he's just showing anything he can just to get viewers.
Right.
That's how they make their money.
That's right.
So this guy's trying to peddle, say, softcore porn.
Right.
It almost reminded me of that Oshima movie. What was that called?
Realm of the Senses?
Yes.
Yeah, me too.
It was very Realm of the Senses.
Yeah. So he takes some cassettes. In fact, they have 13. He goes, just show me the last one. And they go, but Max, you're going to miss the whole point and the whole setup of the character. He says, my viewers are not even going to see the first.
They're going to go right
12.
to the end.
They're just going to see
where the stuff happens.
That's right. So,
but there's a nice cut where you see it on the screen and it cuts to the conference room.
So Max is in the conference room now with his two partners, and they're talking about screening. They're screening Samurai Dreams, and they're going, what do you think of this? And one of his partners says, Oriental sex is a natural.
Right, but the other guy is like, it's not tacky enough.
It's too much class. Bad for sex.
So they're looking for something sleazier. You know, clearly they're going for the low-hanging fruit. They need viewers.
And Max goes, we need something to break through, something tough.
Yeah. And then we cut out on the roof, and it's this huge satellite dish, and it's turning, trying to find a signal. And the camera follows this cable down the wall into this little basement lab.
Paint peeling all over the place. It's just a dirty, dank,
But like an electronics lab. And there
with
we
those
meet
metal shelves that have electronic
gear
bits and pieces.
everywhere. Yeah, just like
boxes of stuff.
And we meet the tech.
He looks kind of like Harold Ramis.
Right, he does.
If he was dressed in L.L. Bean or something, you know?
Harlan is his name.
So he's tinkering with the equipment, and Max walks in.
And he's like, what do you got for me, basically? And Harlan is kind of a little excited. He's found something.
Now, just a quick aside, this is only about 7 minutes into the movie.
Yeah.
I mean, this thing is really going and setting up and doing all these different things. Cronenberg is really moving things along. It's a very tight script.
So Harlan is telling Max that he's picked up a signal, and it's only 53 seconds. He doesn't know where it's from, really.
He thinks it might be from Malaysia. Some sort of a time delay or something.
And he shows Max, and it's this weird looking set.
It looks like a wet basement.
But like red clay.
Yeah, it has red clay walls.
Yeah.
And it looks like people have been trying to climb out of there or something because you see handprints on it. And the basement's completely wet. There's about, a foot of water in it. And there are these two hooded guys with these black aprons on and black hoods and rubber gloves. And they're taking this female victim to the wall to shackle her up and, presumably whip and torture her.
And it's a very strange image. It's very raw looking, first of all. And it's almost like you're seeing something you shouldn't be seeing. And Max is right away. You could see he's drawn to this thing. Yeah.
He's fascinated.
It's like, what is this?
He has a grimace of horror because he can't believe quite what he's looking at. But at the same time, it's simultaneous. He's really fascinated by this.
Of course. And you are too as a viewer because you're like, what is this?
This is so timely.
Yeah.
Yet it was made in 1983.
Yeah.
But it's so timely because if you were to just troll around the internet, you could find anything you want.
Right.
I mean, literally anything you want. And I don't even want to think about what the dark web is. I mean, I don't even know what that is.
That's what this is more akin to.
Yeah.
It's definitely like the dark web.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Max is really intrigued, and he wants Harlan to search for more. He says, just find me more.
So it's just a few seconds. Just 53 seconds?
Yeah, it just cuts out.
And it just goes, it goes. That's the end of it.
Wait, what was that again? How do you spell that?
I don't know if I can spell it. I can probably do it again.
No, you don't have to. It's pretty good.
So it goes, and it just blacks out. And Max goes, that's it? And Harlan says, that's it. Grotesque as promised, Patron. He keeps calling him Patron. That's his name for him.
Yes.
He has this little twinkle in his eye. You want grotesque? I give you grotesque.
And he's always a step ahead of
Absolutely.
Max.
Absolutely.
So the next scene we see Max on this local talk show. It's called the Rennie King Show.
Right.
And on the show is this radio host, this really sexy woman named Nikki.
Nikki Brandt, played by Blondie. Or Deborah Harry.
And this other character, Brian Oblivion. And Brian Oblivion is kind of like this Marshall McLuhan type character.
Yeah.
Like in the 60s and 70s, Marshall McLuhan was like this philosopher, commentator who...
He studied the media.
He had this whole, the medium is the message, if you've ever heard that.
Absolutely.
That's from Marshall McLuhan.
Yep.
And this is what this guy is based on.
Absolutely.
And on the show, she is so sexy, Nikki Brandt, that actually Max...
asks her out on air.
On air, which is kind of funny.
I'd really like to ask you at the dinner. So we get back to the lab. So Harlan comes through and he pulls up some more of this torture and murder broadcast stuff.
Yeah.
And this time, the victim is this black guy.
He's just hanging by chains.
Yeah. And he's being whipped and electronically shocked.
By the two same henchmen.
Right.
In leather aprons.
And hoods. And we have no idea what they look like, but in the same Videodrome room, whatever this is, this basement room. And Max goes, when does the plot start to unravel here? Who is this black guy? Is he a political prisoner? And Harlan says, there is no plot. It just goes on like that for an hour. Torture, murder, mutilation. A real sicko for perverts only. And Max says, this is brilliant. We never leave that room. Absolutely brilliant. I mean, look, there's almost no production cost, and you can't take your eyes off it.
The funny thing is, Max cannot get it out of his head that this isn't produced some way, like fake.
Right.
So he's like, who are the actors? As you said, what's the plot? He thinks it's all put on.
Right.
He cannot accept the fact that it's real.
Wouldn't that be the logical thing to think? Could you actually think that you could have this sort of video running?
Well, right now we're so used to quote unquote reality TV, which we know is not real.
Right.
But that didn't exist then. So his mind is still in this place where it's some great kind of production, because what the perfect idea, like no production value, just pure violence.
What's interesting to me when I look at this, I think about back in the day when they had something called snuff.
Right.
Remember the whole controversy about snuff?
In the 70s.
Movie that was made, and supposedly you actually see real murder take place on the screen.
Which was always kind of the urban lore that these snuff films were out there, and they would put them on Times Square. They were all just kind of exploitation films. They may have been snuff films, but they never won.
Well, Paul Schrader takes that whole idea and goes with it in the movie Hardcore with George C. Scott.
Sure. So the idea here is this is some kind of a snuff thing happening.
Right.
But Max, again, at this point, he still can't get his mind around that. And then, funny enough, I love the tag on the scene is Harlan's like, he explains the signal's not coming from Malaysia, but Pittsburgh.
Not so exotic anymore.
I always thought was that like a reference to George Romero or something.
That's a good point. I didn't think of that.
But that, again, that further intrigues Max, funny enough. Like, what?
But Woods is the perfect guy for the job. He slips so easily into character. Like, this guy has no moral scruples at all. Whatever's good for business.
Right, exactly.
It's good for Max.
And you can see in this scene, like, the hook is set.
In comes Nikki Brand, who is a call-in talk show host for a show called Emotional Rescue. And I don't know, John, do you think Mick and Keith got any royalties for that?
Well, it's funny. I looked it up because I was like, what came first? And actually, the album came first. So he takes her out, and we end up at his apartment.
I love how Max's whole apartment is all about television.
Yeah.
He's got boxes of videotapes. The television is always on.
Well, it's his life.
Right, exactly. So Nikki is looking through a bunch of videotapes, and she says, "You got any porn?" And Max looks at her like, "You serious?" And she goes, "Yeah, sure, why not? It gets me in the mood."
Sure.
So we go,
she's ready to go.
I was going to say, she's ready to go. They barely just got in the apartment. So she goes, "What's this?" And it's Videodrome. And he goes, "Oh, that's just, torture, murder." She goes, "Oh."
It's funny. He's kind of dismissive in a way, almost like he doesn't even realize what it is in a sense. He's like,
just torture, murder.
Yeah.
But she goes, "Oh, sounds good to me. I'd like to see that." I like how they're sitting on the couch all kind of cozy up like they're watching, I don't know, some old Betty Davis movie or something.
And she asks him, does he have a Swiss Army knife? I found that funny, like Swiss Army knife?
We find some interesting things out about Nikki Brand.
Yeah.
That she's really into this S&M self-mutilation or minor mutilation of herself and getting cut.
Well, she asks him to cut her on the shoulder.
Right.
And we see there's like about 4 previous cuts, and they're not healed.
No, it's pretty recent.
Scabbed.
Right. He's a little weirded out by it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, kind of intrigued.
I know. I thought it was funny, though, that your initial impression of Max is he's always looking for the next crazy thing, but here's someone that's really kind of crazy, and he's a little thrown off.
You got a point, John, because he is more the voyeur.
Yeah.
He's not necessarily the guy who dives in. He's the voyeur.
That's a really good point.
And
Rob.
that's the way he is, but he seems to get pulled in bit by bit for certain things that are titillating, sexual or otherwise.
And she is looking at this show, but she's wondering, how can she get on? She wants to be a contestant.
Yeah.
She's like, how do you become a contestant on this show?
This is not exactly The Price is Right. And I don't think Johnny Olsen calls you down and said, "You're the next on Videodrome."
But I'm thinking, who would look at that and go, how can I get on?
But that's what makes her character interesting. And that's what pulls Max in a little bit further into this other kind of netherworld.
So we cut to them, and they're suddenly naked on the floor in front of the TV.
Right. Max is going along with Nikki's preference, and he has a hat pin, is what it is, one of those long pins with a little pearl kind of ball at the back, and he's just playing around by poking her in the skin, and then puts it in her ear and starts to draw blood.
Well, he goes right through her earlobe,
right?
Because on the other side he's holding a cork,
right? Which is basically how you pierce an ear if you're going to do it the homemade way,
without any ice or anything.
No. So she's into it, and she's really enjoying it.
Well, you could see her face she kind of gets very kind of excited as that happens. I mean, it does have an effect on her.
Absolutely. She's enjoying herself. And so is Max at this point. In fact, he puts it through her ear at one point, and then whatever blood's left over on it, he just licks the blood off like some sort of savage.
Yeah.
So Max is starting to go a little bit further than being just a voyeur. He's starting to experience stuff in a certain way that he has not before.
And then the camera pulls back, and we're suddenly on the set of Videodrome.
But this sort of stylized set, because it's a combination. You know,
it's like the black rubber floor suddenly.
It kind of reminded me of a combination of the clean wood Japanese set for Samurai Dreams mixed with the really creepy, dark basement and clay wall of the Videodrome set. So what are we seeing here? You know,
they're just on the set, laying down in the same position, basically. And then we cut back to the screen again. So we go into the set and then we come back out.
When we cut out of the screen, it's Max kind of shaking his head, going, "What the hell was that?"
Yeah,
you know,
is it a hallucination? Or
exactly.
What? So clearly something's going on here. And we cut to back to the TV office. Civic TV. I love it, Civic TV, as if this is for the general public. Yeah, Max.
It's their civic duty.
And here we meet Bridie, Gal Friday, in the flesh this time. He comes in and she hands him her coffee. And he's rushing into a meeting. I love this. He's walking down the hall, and there's some young blonde intern.
Smacks her on the butt.
No, he pinches her.
Oh, that's right.
And the girl turns to him and smiles as if like this is a game they play every day.
Sure.
And I'm like, times have changed.
So then he goes into this room because there's somebody waiting for him that Bridie tells him. And it's this client of his, Masha.
Yeah.
And she...
I love Masha.
I love the actress, Lynn Gorman, because she's really authentic. You totally believe she's this character. She has this really raspy, kind of gravelly, old broad type. And she
smoker's voice.
Smoker, exactly. She's smoked for a lifetime, but she has this European sophistication to her that's really great.
So she's showing Max a show she's obviously trying to sell him or get onto his station. It's called Apollo and Dionysus.
It looks like this kind of overblown 80s type porn thing. She's excited about it because she thinks this is really something Max will love. Right. But Max is not too in tune to it. It's not exactly what I'm looking for. He wants something more contemporary. And he asks her if she's ever heard of Videodrome. He says it's just torture and murder, no plot, no character. It's very, very realistic.
So he wants her to go find it.
This is what I'm looking for. I think this is what's next, the next big thing. And Marcia says, then God help us.
Yes.
So Marcia gets back to him. And she explains to him that you need to stay away from this Videodrome. She says it's very dangerous. It's not for public consumption. And it's not acting. It's for real. It's real torture and real murder. Snuff TV, she says.
But she's interesting. Like, she does say, be careful, Max. It has something you don't. It has a philosophy.
Right.
Like,
and that's what makes it dangerous.
This is the real thing. She tells him to go seek out Brian Oblivion because he's the one who would know about it.
That's the only name she can get, Brian Oblivion.
Right.
So he seeks him out.
So then we cut to this. I love it. It's kind of like a Bowery mission, the Cathode Ray Mission. In an old church building, like a lot of them are.
Basically, that you go into the mission rather than, getting some sort of sermon or getting hot soup and whatnot, which I guess they do serve some food and stuff in there. You get your daily dose of the cathode ray tube. In essence, you just sit in front of some television, and that's what Brian Oblivion's philosophy is, that you need to have more television.
But it's funny when he goes in because there's all these kind of makeshift cubicles.
Well, that's Carol Spear. I mean, this really great set of this retrofitted hodgepodge, garbagey stuff you'd find out on a construction site.
Because how much would a mission have? How much money would a mission have? So it's whatever they can find.
And it's all hammered together, and it's got some graffiti on one thing and some wallpaper on another cubicle. So and all these different makes of televisions, some really cheap ones, black and white.
So these little cubicles have these TVs in each cubicle, and there's like a homeless person in there.
Right.
In each one. Instead of giving them food, they're sitting there watching TV. And so he goes upstairs looking for Brian, and he comes up to gets upstairs, sneaks up there, and there's this Gothic office, kind of old furniture and pews and paintings, and he runs into Bianca Oblivion, which is
Brian's daughter.
Right.
And Max asks her, what's this all about? What's the story with these people sitting watch television? And she says that it will, at least in her father's philosophy, is it will help them patch into the world's mixing board.
So he wants to talk to the father, but she's like, he doesn't talk. He only communicates
on television.
On television.
Right.
It's like the monologue is his preferred mode of discourse. I love that. And then we cut to Max back in his apartment, and he's writing notes. He's looking at Videodrome again. She has brought him a tape.
Bianca Oblivion.
And he picks it up. He's looking at it, and suddenly it just, again, this thing starts to breathe.
You see it actually flex and take a breath. It's like a chest moving, breathing.
And he
drops it.
Drops it like a hot potato. I just have to say, again, practical effects.
It looks like a hard something,
it looks like hard black plastic.
And it actually breathes and moves.
It's great. Great stuff.
So he drops it on the floor, and he's kind of freaked out about it, and then he just kind of taps it with his toe over his shoe. Is that thing going to bite me? And then he looks around the apartment like he's waiting for Alan Funt to come out of the room or something.
And he puts it in the player, and we see it's Brian Oblivion on TV, and he's going on about, the Battle of North America is being fought in the video arena, the Videodrome. And, he goes his whole philosophy again. The TV screen is the retina of the mind's eye, blah, blah, blah. He's got this whole philosophy how TV's just kind of taken over our lives. And he suddenly starts talking directly to Max from the TV.
Brian Oblivion is talking, like you said, about his whole philosophy and whatnot.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, the perspective changes because the sound changes. And Brian Oblivion looks directly at Max.
Yeah.
And Max just sits straight up in his chair and starts paying attention to what's going on here.
And suddenly, out from behind Brian Oblivion, we see this henchman, dressed as we've seen before.
Shackling him.
The guy's just one at a time, shackling each arm to the chair.
Yeah.
And suddenly, he just starts to choke Brian Oblivion.
He's mid-sentence.
And Max is just totally freaked out.
Somebody's actually killing this guy.
So as he's being choked, he's saying, I was Videodrome's first victim.
And then we see the hood come off of the executioner, and the executioner is Nikki Brand. Max doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know how to make heads or tails of any of this stuff.
And she's like, come to me, Max. And he's hypnotized. He's like slowly drawn to the TV. And she's kind of very sexually enticing him to come.
Beckoning.
Come to me, yeah.
He gets closer and closer to the television set, and as he does, the television set becomes alive. It starts to breathe just like the video cassette.
Yeah.
And it starts to expand. And then you see veins pulsating on the top of the television set. And once again, we're talking Rick Baker. Right. Oh my God.
Yeah.
You totally believe that this thing, this hard piece of wooden plastic and glass has come alive and is breathing. It reminded me of the Haunting. When the house is breathing.
Right. Yeah. And what's great on the TV is Nikki keeps talking and enticing Max. The camera gets closer and closer to her, and it's just her lips now.
Right.
Her red lips just filling the screen.
And Max gets really all caught up in this.
Yeah.
And he starts to lean into the television set, and the television screen starts to bow, it starts to flex out toward him. And it's become this living, breathing thing, this television set. It has to be the weirdest lovemaking scene I've ever seen in my life. Finally, Woods just throws his whole body into it and puts his head into the television screen, which flexes around him, and he puts his hand on it, and he's making love to Nikki through the television screen.
Like his head seems to go right into the screen. And you're looking at this going, okay, I don't know how they did this. Clearly, it's special effects with some prosthetics or something, but
some sort of rubber stretching out in it, but it looks totally convincing.
But it's glowing like the TV.
Yes, it's projecting the actual image itself.
It's really a great effect. I mean, and so unusual. Cronenberg in a nutshell, right? You know, just
Absolutely.
Like technology becoming alive. And again, we just have to say again, this is all before CGI. It's all practical effects.
It's bizarre, it's erotic, and it's believable, John.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of David Cronenberg and his cinematographer and his art director, Carol Spear. I mean, this is what really makes it all come together. This guy has ideas in his head, and they are realized on the screen. It's incredible.
Yeah. So now we're back at the Cathode Ray Mission, and Max, he has his cassette, and he's showing it to Bianca Oblivion.
He's handing it to her, and he goes, "Watch out. It bites."
Yeah. And he explains how he's been hallucinating, and she tells him that you have to be careful, Max. Videodrome is a signal, basically. And
it can be delivered through anything, even as innocuous as a test pattern.
Right, yeah. It doesn't have to be the video.
John, a test pattern, okay? We're going way, way back. Before television was 24 hours a day, we actually signed off the television, had the national anthem, and then we had boop with the test pattern.
And she's telling him this signal will induce a brain tumor, and then the tumor will cause hallucinations. So she's basically
And you let me watch it, he says?
Yeah, he's like, what? Wait a minute.
But she didn't realize that he was not coming for her. She's expecting for someone to come to her and kill her. But she says, you're just another victim, like my father was.
Right. So he wants to see her father. Like, where's your father? And she's like, he's back here. And he cut into this back storage room, and it's just lined with shelves and shelves, various types of video cassettes and reels.
And all kinds of grays. They're all just kinds of grays. I love this scene. What I love about this scene is that all too often you see in a movie where they go, okay, we're going to sit you down for a little while. We're going to explain what's going on here.
Yeah.
But it's done in a really interesting conversational way. And I think that Woods is so good in this scene because you really believe that he's overwhelmed that, wait a second, this is your father all on videotape? Your father died? Well, I appeared on television with him. He's on television. How could he possibly be dead? And she says, I've been keeping him alive with the videotapes.
Well, he knew he was dying. So he spent days and days and days recording his message.
Right.
In all different formats. And so he knew he would live on these tapes. It's almost a metaphor for today, right? He's become TV. He's become the media.
Well, he said he felt that being on television was more real than life itself.
But think about that. Isn't that what we're doing today? Like everyone is taking video and photos, going up on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. We're living our lives on the air.
Right. Now think about 1983.
Yeah.
How far ahead of its time this kind of concept was. Absolutely, positively.
Brian Oblivion was the first.
And we learned that Brian Oblivion helped to create Videodrome. And his nefarious business partners wanted to take it away from him, and it ended up in Oblivion's death. I love how Woods plays this whole scene out. You just see it on his face that he's not this smarmy guy at this moment. He's intrigued and incredulous at the same time.
Well, now he's worried he's infected.
Well, he knows for a fact he's infected. Yeah. So, what do I do now? Basically, he asks her.
She basically just hands him a bunch of tapes. The answer is here in all these tapes. So we cut to Max's home. He's watching Brian Oblivion on TV.
Right.
It's night. He's laid out on his couch, just sitting there. He's got no shirt on.
But he has a gun holster on.
The holster around his shoulders.
Now, the thing is, this is just showing you how paranoid he's really becoming about this.
You know what he looked like? Travis Bickle, basically.
Absolutely. It's exactly what he looked like.
Yeah. Like who sits watching TV with a gun around their, on their shoulder?
Well, if you're Travis Bickle, you do sit around home like that.
So Brian Oblivion he's going on and on about how this tumor was a growth in his head and how it progressed. Massive doses of Videodrome will create a new outgrowth of the human brain. He's going on and on about how this is going to become flesh.
Yes, a new organ you're going to get. It's not a tumor. It's a new organ that's going to heighten your brain function. And
it's scary in a way because it's this whole allegory of how our perception of reality. You watch too much TV, it's going to infect your brain or affect your brain rather.
Well, it's like Peter Finch in Network, and when he says it all comes through the tube. But that's exactly what's happening here. Now we don't have the tube anymore. We've mechanized it in such a way that we don't need that cathode ray tube anymore.
We have the screen.
Well, the screen. But it's all the same thing. So no matter how much technology you have, we're still getting drawn further and further into it. And that's why Max is in business, because people want more stuff.
So suddenly you cut back to Max and he's watching and he just looks down. For some reason, he just looks down.
He keeps itching his stomach. And he's got this scar. Looked like he must have had an operation or something at the time. It's just got this vertical scar straight up his abdomen. He starts to scratch and scratch, but he's scratching it with his pistol. And then all of a sudden, this wound opens.
Large gaping wound.
Slit.
Vertical slit. Very strange. The strangest makeup effect you'll see, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So Max is kind of looking at this thing like, in a way he's surprised, but it's there.
It's a gaping chasm in the middle of his abdomen.
But inexplicably, he just takes the gun, just poking it.
Yeah.
Like, what? And you're looking at this going, there's no way they did this. How did they do this? You cannot see any kind of device or he's not hidden
and he's sitting there on the couch.
Without a shirt.
Yeah.
And you don't see his body in a different shape, like they stuck it on or something. It's like, what the heck? And he's poking it, and suddenly he starts to put the gun inside his stomach.
And he's feeling around.
Would you do that? First of all, if you had a wound like that, would you stick something in it?
No, I don't think so. But it reminded me of, there's a Stephen King story. It's called the Revelations of Becca Paulson. It was in Rolling Stone years and years ago. And in it, this woman accidentally shoots herself in the head with this pistol up on the shelf, and she starts poking and prodding it. She actually puts an eyebrow pencil in as far as it'll go because she can't believe that this just took place. So that's exactly what this reminded me of.
So he sticks the gun in, and of course he tries to pull it out, and his hand gets stuck.
He plucks his hand out, and then the wound closes up.
Without the gun. He doesn't have the gun.
Suddenly, he's lost the gun.
Yeah.
And he goes, this can't be possible. It's got to be in the couch or on the floor.
But it's funny. He goes looking all over for
under
it.
the cushions, throwing stuff out. You hear glasses breaking and stuff. He can't believe that I lost the gun. It's inside me.
It's like when you and I lose our eyeglasses. Where did I put those?
I never checked my stomach.
No, I've never done that.
Maybe that's where it is. So after this horrific experience, and once again, this is Cronenberg. You are carried through this fantastical story. It's not even possible, but you believe it.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're seeing it on the screen. So he gets this phone call from somebody he doesn't even know, and he says that Barry Convex wants to talk to you.
Yes.
There's a car waiting for you downstairs. What I also love about Cronenberg is he has a sort of Dickensian way with names. Barry Convex.
Yeah.
This guy's the head of Spectacular Optical, which makes lenses for glasses for third world countries, and they also make missile systems for NATO.
So it's some kind of huge conglomerate.
Exactly.
Right. But what's funny is when he gets to the location, it's this dumpy eyeglass store in this poor neighborhood.
Yeah.
As you said, they're making glasses. I just thought that was kind of funny.
It is weird because it's the glass is cracked on the door when they come in and stuff. So it isn't a crappy little neighborhood, and it's a crappy little store.
I actually think it's that way because that's what the budget. And they said, well, let's use it.
There you go.
Make the most of it.
So Barry Convex introduces himself to Max and has him come into the back of the shop. And he says, look, he's concerned because the Videodrome signal has gotten out there. And we know that Max has gotten infected by it.
Right.
And he's concerned because he doesn't want to spread any further. Our other people that have been exposed to the Videodrome signals, they're in need of intense psychiatric care. So I advise you to just work with me on this. We want to tape your hallucinations and then study them.
Well, he's got this bizarre, he calls it a prototype contraption. And he entices Max by saying, it may help him with the tumor if you let us record your visions, basically.
They want to analyze it and see exactly what's going on there. And the way to induce it, which is interesting,
yes.
is we need a little S&M to get the juices flowing.
Well, something about S&M and violence.
It's the violence and the sex that hits your receptors in your brain that opens you up to receive the Videodrome signal.
What's great is you're back in this kind of dank back room now, and here's this huge kind of headset. It goes over your head. And you can see there's glasses in it. It's like 30 years before virtual reality glasses.
It looks just like a virtual reality helmet.
Yeah.
Barry Convex is trying to come across that he's trying to help Max.
Right.
But Barry Convex isn't really interested in helping Max. He's interested in using him to further his whole Videodrome project. And we find out that Harlan, his faithful assistant, is a plant, that he had been planted there 2 years to kind of prime this whole thing so they could get their hands on Channel 83.
And there's a very interesting tale when Max realizes Harlan has never looked at the screen.
Right. That's why you didn't get it. You never looked at the screen.
He turns away.
And this was never broadcast.
Yes.
This is all on tape to infect Max with the Videodrome signal. And Harlan further explains why they want to get this Videodrome signal into the households of the American public.
He's also, before you say that, he's blaming Max for kind of distributing this crap to the nation.
Right.
In a way. He calls it a cesspool of a station. So
he says North America is getting soft and the rest of the world is getting tough. Very, very tough. And we're entering savage new times. We got to be pure. And we got to be direct and we got to be strong if we're going to survive this. So Barry says, you know what? We think you're ready for something new. And he pulls out this video cassette.
Yeah.
And he jams it into Max's abdomen, that open scar.
Well, what's funny is he's approaching Max. You see this kind of wind blow Max, and we're kind of in this another reality.
Right.
And suddenly Max's shirt is open, and there's the wound again.
And Barry Convex shoves the video cassette into it like you sort of would vertically into a VCR.
Yeah.
And now he's, quote unquote, reprogramming Max to take him to another level.
So Max is kind of crawling around on the floor in pain, and Barry...
Why make him watch something if you can insert the videotape right into him? Just cut out the middleman,
He's just going to play him.
That's right.
But he says, we want Channel 83, Max. Kill your partners and give us Channel 83.
Absolutely.
So he's going to turn out... they want him to be this kind of assassin.
So Max reaches into his abdominal slot and he takes out the pistol that he lost, quote unquote.
Suddenly finds it there.
Yeah.
Amongst the cassettes.
Pair of reading glasses. And another magical Rick Baker effect is when he takes the gun out of his abdomen, and then you see the gun start to become part of his hand.
Well, these kind of steel tendrils come out of the gun they're kind of spiked. And they're going through Max's hand.
And into it, which obviously it hurts because it's bleeding at the same time, but he's becoming this sort of cyborg type marriage between machine and flesh.
And Max is fascinated at it. He's just looking at it. And again, really nice combination of it. It's almost like claymation and prosthetic makeup.
Stop motion.
Weird.
Yeah.
Very good look, but great stuff. So Max now has become the gun, and he goes into the station.
Goes into the boardroom where his two partners are, and he kills them.
But they see him, and this is really messed up because when he cuts into the room, the gun is just a regular gun now.
Right.
And these guys see him, and they put their hands up, like defensively.
Right.
They know it's coming.
Yeah.
They're like, it's not like a...
He shoots right through his arm.
Yeah, it's awful.
I mean, it's not really much.
You feel really bad for these guys. So he kills them both.
Have you seen their programming?
I'll just comment on that in a way. Again, this is another thing like that's so common now, like workplace shootings.
Yeah.
It's weird how this movie is just like way ahead of its time.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a lot of things in this movie that have come to fruition.
Yeah.
Very strange.
So a visionary, if there ever was one, David Cronenberg. So he kills his two partners and then leaves the building. And then we hear in a voiceover, because I guess this is the program that Max has been programmed, kill Bianca Oblivion. When he gets there, she's prepared for him. She's going to reprogram him like a video tape recorder. And so she sends him out to finish off Videodrome in essence.
It's interesting. She's going to change the program.
Yeah. It's always painful to remove the cassette.
Yeah. But it's like she wants him to use what he's learning. She wanted to turn it back on Videodrome.
Right.
So now they're going after Videodrome.
Right.
Death to Videodrome.
Long live the new flesh. Max makes his way to
Spectacular Optical.
And he goes in the back, and there's Harlan. And Harlan's ready for him. And he goes, okay, I got an idea. And he pulls out a cassette. Now, this one doesn't look even remotely black or plastic. It's this flesh-colored, pulsating video cassette that he's ready to slam right into Max and reprogram him again.
Right.
But he doesn't get what he's bargained for. His hand goes into Max's slot in his abdomen with this fleshy video cassette, and all of a sudden, Max looks at him and clenches his abdominal muscles, and Harlan can't get his hand out.
Clamps down on Harlan's hand.
And he can't get it out. So he finally rips his hand out of Max's abdomen, and you see his hand is this big...
Well, it's almost stripped away.
It's stripped away, but what it's become is one of those old-fashioned German hand grenades.
Potato mashers, they call them.
Potato mashers, exactly.
But in flesh.
In flesh, which means his hand is all burned and all ripped away. So, I mean, it's painful to look at for God's sake.
But it's almost like the handle of it is the bone of his arm.
Yes,
it's
absolutely.
Weird. It's just like, ugh.
And he just is horrified and in pain, and he runs backwards. And you know what happens to the potato masher hand grenades after they go off, right, John?
It just blows
Ba-boom.
up. And of course, I looked at that and I laughed because I thought, I think they just threw this in there because the guy exploding in Scanners was so popular that they had to do it again. They had to repeat it. They needed to give the audience something.
Another showstopper.
Yeah.
So Max makes his way to Barry Convex, who's in the middle of this big trade show. And then Max comes up on stage with the gun.
I love this, the flesh gun.
Yes.
Because the gun is all covered in ooze also now. It's become part of him more so.
It has become completely part of him. You don't even see the mechanical parts. It's his hand has become this flesh gun.
And he stalks and then shoots him several times. And then
I'm not quite sure what was in those bullets, but boy, oh boy, did Barry Convex... explode, decompose, what would you call that?
Well, he shoots him in the forehead, but then he starts convulsing. And stuff just starts oozing out of him. It looks like cauliflower or something. It's just so disgusting.
It's repulsive, yeah.
But it's a great effect because the guy's like, I couldn't even tell if it was a fake body or really him. It was very convincing.
It's really 80s.
Yeah.
It's very 80s, gore effect.
Great stuff. It's almost like David Cronenberg's going, you want gore? I'll give you gore.
I'll give you
gore.
Give you all the gore you want. Well, they didn't call him the Baron of Blood for nothing. So Max makes his way over to this waterfront and this abandoned cargo ship.
there's like a little mattress in the corner. It's almost like a homeless person is living there,
Right.
and he's just trying to get away or something and hide. And he just slays down, and then he sees that console.
Then he sees the console with Nikki on it. She says to him, Max, death is not the end. In order to become part of the new flesh, as he was talking about, you first have to kill the old flesh. But don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to let your body die, which is interesting because it's exactly what Bianca Oblivion said about her father. My father wasn't afraid to let his body die.
And she's like, watch, I'll show you how. It's easy. And on the screen, you suddenly cut to Max standing over this fire in the middle of this room, but it's on the screen.
Right.
And he takes the gun, puts it up to his head, and shoots himself.
And then, of course, with Rick Baker's effect, we see what happens to the television set, which is this viscera comes flying out of the screen and goes landing all over the place with smoke and whatnot. And he gets up and he puts up the flesh gun to his head and says, "Long live the new flesh." Bang, and we go to black.
I found that really interesting. I thought about that. Like, why do you think he showed it twice? I couldn't figure that out exactly. Once on screen, and then you almost see the same exact thing happen, but it does cut away.
It is the same. Yeah, right. Well, maybe it starts as the image itself and then becomes the reality.
Maybe.
I think maybe so what he's doing in that case.
And I have to say, it's just one of his bleakest endings.
Absolutely.
Because it's the main character. But
is it bleak? Is he actually going on to the new flesh? Is this a rebirth?
I think you're right.
And what kind of a frightening world are we going to be in for with this, this battle of the new flesh and the old flesh?
Well, we have that battle now, right? Because it's almost like that's what
Republicans
this movie's
and
about.
Democrats.
No, but it's like I think a lot of young people and older people are confused about where their lives are. Is it on a screen or is it, you know what I mean? People get so caught up in screens, they're not living their life.
Great example of Cronenberg. If you are interested in a filmmaker who is completely and utterly uncompromising in his vision, this is a movie to see, or study some Cronenberg because he bears watching.
Amen. Well, that's all the time we have this week.
We'd like to thank our friend Glenn Arnowitz for his music.
And of course, our listeners for tuning in.
So join us next week for another episode of
Film Detour.
If you like our show, please recommend us to your friends. Subscribe to us on iTunes, Stitcher, or Google Play, and leave a review.
Go to our website at filmdetourpodcast.com to leave comments or email us with questions. You can also visit us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter.